And we want to bring you some breaking news overnight from Texas, where the state Supreme Court has stayed the execution of Robert Roberson. That's the man convicted of killing his daughter based on a now disputed diagnosis of shaken baby syndrome.
Welcome to News English Explained. Today, we're bringing you breaking news from Texas about Robert Roberson, a man convicted of killing his daughter based on a diagnosis of shaken baby syndrome. Each lesson follows a structured format with 4 main parts. First, we'll watch the news story with subtitles. Then, I'll explain the story and the vocabulary used. After that, you'll take a short quiz to practice the new words and phrases. Finally, we'll watch the story again without subtitles to challenge your listening skills. As always, let's get started by watching the news story with subtitles.
And we want to bring you some breaking news overnight from Texas, where the state Supreme Court has stayed the execution of Robert Roberson. That's the man convicted of killing his daughter based on a now disputed diagnosis of shaken baby syndrome. Our Nikki Batiste brings us more from Huntsville, Texas. Nikki, good morning.
Good morning. Robert Robertson's life is spared for now. In what was one of his last lifelines, a bipartisan group of Texas lawmakers issued a subpoena requiring Roberson to testify at a hearing next week as they reconsider the lawfulness of his case. It was an unprecedented legal strategy, and it worked. Just 90 minutes before Roberson was set to die by lethal injection, a Texas judge issued a restraining order, essentially to keep Roberson alive so he could testify. Ultimately, the Texas Supreme Court here agreed and issued that stay of his execution. Robertson's lawyers have said that an autopsy showed his daughter died from pneumonia and complications of pneumonia, not the shaken baby syndrome prosecutors have always alleged. So this coming Monday, we expect Roberson will testify in front of a House committee here in Texas. A prison spokesperson said when Roberson learned of his stay, he praised God and thanked his supporters.
The news anchor begins the story by reporting that the Texas Supreme Court has stayed the execution of Robert Roberson. This means that his execution has been temporarily stopped. The verb stay in legal context means to stop or suspend something. For example, a court might stay a ruling or a sentence, which means they delay the action until further notice. In this case, Roberson's execution is not canceled, but it is delayed while his case is reconsidered. Another word for this is postponed, but stay is the formal legal term used here. The story mentions that Roberson was convicted of killing his daughter based on a diagnosis of shaken baby syndrome. This is a serious condition where a baby is violently shaken, causing brain injuries that can sometimes lead to death. It's important to note that shaken baby syndrome, often abbreviated as SBS, is a medical diagnosis that has been used in legal cases for many years. However, in recent times, some medical experts have begun to question the validity of this diagnosis in certain cases. This is why the story says it's a now disputed diagnosis, meaning people are now debating whether shaken baby syndrome was really the cause of his daughter's death. The news anchor continues by saying, Roberson's life is spared for now. The phrase spared for now means that, at least temporarily, Roberson will not be executed. The phrase for now implies that this is not a permanent decision. It could change in the future depending on the outcome of his new hearing. This expression is often used to indicate something is temporary. For example, the meeting has been canceled for now, meaning it could be rescheduled later. The news anchor introduces Nikki Batiste, a reporter, who gives more details from Huntsville, Texas. Nikki says that Roberson's case got a new chance thanks to a bipartisan group of Texas lawmakers. Bipartisan means involving 2 political parties, in this case, both Republicans and Democrats. When something is described as bipartisan, it means people from different political parties have come together to work on it. For example, the bipartisan bill was passed by both parties in Congress. In Roberson's case, lawmakers from both sides agreed that his execution should be delayed so they could re-examine his case. The anchor then says that the lawmakers issued a subpoena, which is a legal document that orders someone to testify in court. A subpoena compels a person to give testimony or provide evidence. In this case, Robert Roberson has been subpoenaed, meaning he must testify at a hearing next week. The word testify means to give evidence in a legal case by speaking under oath. For example, the witness testified that she saw the defendant at the crime scene. Next, the anchor explains that this legal strategy is unprecedented. Unprecedented means that something has never happened before. In this case, it refers to the fact that issuing a subpoena to delay an execution is not a common legal strategy. The use of the word unprecedented highlights how unusual this situation is. For example, the company's success was unprecedented in the industry, with record profits never seen before. Getting back to the story, the news anchor tells us that this legal strategy worked just 90 minutes before Roberson was set to die by lethal injection. Lethal injection refers to a method of execution in which a person is injected with a fatal dose of drugs. It's a common method of execution in the United States. The term set to die means that everything was prepared for Roberson's execution, but the court intervened at the last minute. The news anchor says that a Texas judge issued a restraining order to keep Roberson alive. In legal terms, a restraining order is typically a court order that limits someone's actions. However, in this case, it means that the court has ordered the state not to carry out the execution. A restraining order can be temporary or permanent, depending on the situation. The news anchor then explains that Roberson's lawyers argue that his daughter died from pneumonia, not shaken baby syndrome. Pneumonia is a serious lung infection that can make it difficult to breathe. The word complications is used to describe problems that arise from a medical condition. In this case, the lawyers claim that Roberson's daughter died due to pneumonia and the complications that came from it, rather than from being shaken. For example, the patient died from complications of heart surgery. Finally, we learn that Roberson will testify in front of a House committee. In the U.S. legal system, a House committee is a group of lawmakers who investigate and make decisions about specific issues. This committee will review Roberson's case to determine whether his original trial was fair and if new evidence, such as the disputed diagnosis, should change the outcome. We've covered a lot of important vocabulary in this lesson, including stay, shaken baby syndrome, bipartisan, subpoena, testify, unprecedented, lethal injection, restraining order, and pneumonia. Up next, we'll do a 3-question quiz to practice these new words and phrases. The best way to learn something is to use it, so let's put our new knowledge to the test. In this section, we'll give you 3 short answer questions. Try to answer each question in 2 to 3 sentences using the vocabulary and phrases we just learned. Remember to pause the video after each question to think about your answer. Question 1. Why was Robert Roberson's execution stayed by the Texas Supreme Court? Pause here. Answer. Robert Roberson's execution was stayed by the Texas Supreme Court because there was a legal question about the diagnosis of shaken baby syndrome, which his lawyers argue was not the real cause of his daughter's death. Accusation 2. What is a bipartisan group and why was it important in this case? Pause here. Answer. A bipartisan group includes members of 2 political parties, and it was important in Roberson's case because lawmakers from both parties worked together to issue a subpoena that delayed his execution. Question 3. What argument did Roberson's lawyers use to defend him? Pause here. Answer. Roberson's lawyers argued that his daughter died from pneumonia and complications of pneumonia, not from shaken baby syndrome as the prosecutors had claimed. Great job. Now, let's watch the news story again without subtitles. It'll be a bit more challenging, but it's a fantastic way to reinforce what you've learned.
And we want to bring you some breaking news overnight from Texas, where the state Supreme Court has stayed the execution of Robert Roberson. That's the man convicted of killing his daughter based on a now disputed diagnosis of shaken baby syndrome. Our Nikki Batiste brings us more from Huntsville, Texas. Nikki, good morning.
Good morning. Robert Robertson's life is spared for now. In what was one of his last lifelines, a bipartisan group of Texas lawmakers issued a subpoena requiring Robertson to testify at a hearing next week as they reconsider the lawfulness of his case. It was an unprecedented legal strategy, and it worked. Just 90 minutes before Robertson was set to die by lethal injection, a Texas judge issued a restraining order, essentially to keep Robertson alive so he could testify. Ultimately, the Texas Supreme Court here agreed and issued that stay of his execution. Robertson's lawyers have said that an autopsy showed his daughter died from pneumonia and complications of pneumonia, not the shaken baby syndrome prosecutors have always alleged. So this coming Monday, we expect Robertson will testify in front of a House committee here in Texas. A prison spokesperson said when Robertson learned of his stay, he praised God and thanked his supporters.
That brings us to the end of today's lesson. Thanks for watching and learning with us. Don't forget to use one of the new vocabulary words in a sentence today. Maybe you'll find an unprecedented way to do it. See you next time.